Hey all, 𝘙𝙖𝙨 here, and I've got another basics for you. I want to talk about inductive sensors and the question, does size matter? And it really depends on how far you need it to go. You know, the inductive principle relies on an electromagnetic field to detect metal parts. And so when metal part enters the field, it detects that it's there. Now, generally, this field is proportional to the size of the coil inside the sensor. So the bigger the coil, the further away the sensor can detect. So all things being equal, the width dimension does matter when it comes to sensing. Generally, a medium-sized coil like this 12mm Prox that I have here can see 2mm to 4mm depending on the technology, and so you can see it there. A wider coil can go further, like an 18mm inductive sensor can go like 5mm to 8mm, and a 30mm inductive sensor has an impressive range from like 10 to 20mm. And so this actually has a 30mm coil in it. You can see there that we actually have a much further sensing range, about 20mm. And so we can push it out a lot farther when we have a bigger width of the coil. Inversely, as the sensor diameter gets narrower, it has less power. And so an M8 sensor commonly has a range of like 1.5mm to 3mm. As it's smaller and as it gets smaller, it needs to be more precise. A 5mm, like this one, has a commonly 1.5mm or less. So you can actually see there, it's turning on, but it's almost touching the part. And then with automation, really all sizes are needed, and precision becomes important in very small movements. So Valve makes an incredibly impressive small 3mm Prox with 1mm. Okay, sometimes, however, applications only have so much space, and we really need to extend that sensing distance beyond where it is with just that traditional coil. And so we can actually pull back the metal here. We can actually pull back the metal sleeve here and expose the coil more. And so when we pull the metal away from the tip there and we expose the coil more, that we can actually get more sensing range because the field can come out the side. And so this is called flush mount versus non-flush mount. So we can have the same diameter, but we can have different sensing distances if we pull back that shielding and get it away from the coil. The other thing to talk about is the importance of the length. Is the length important? And really, the length is relatively unimportant to the sensing distance. Sensor length really is just the preference of the person using it. Some prefer really short proxes, some even prefer flat proxes, some prefer the longer prox. It really just depends. And so we'll talk about that in another video, what the length actually does. But ultimately, the length of the sensor need is really determined by the application and has no effect on the sensing distance. So in summary, the answer to the question, does size matter, is this. The width and diameter are really important. The length doesn't matter as much. It's really how you use it that matters. Each application in an automation project is really satisfied by different sensors and really requires application specificity for the best outcomes. So you can't just use one prox for all applications. You really have to think about what you're trying to do and then make a good fit. So hope this helps. I'll link to a playlist of other inductive basics, and I'll also link to a product selector where you can change the width, called styles, and see how the measuring range is affected. So until next time, ask yourself, what will I automate next?